My entitled sister wanted to put non-edible glitter in Thanksgiving food, so I told her she's not allowed to bring her awful food, and now she's furious. Hi all, welcome to Story Nest. Subscribing really helps us out and guarantees you'll always stay up to date with our stories. Every year, Thanksgiving is a huge deal in our family. It's the one time we all come together, share a meal, and catch up. I've been hosting for the past few years, taking the reins on the main dishes to ensure everything runs smoothly. Everyone contributes, usually by bringing a dish or two, but it's become a bit of a tradition for my sister, Emily, to make something, well, let's just say unique. Don't get me wrong, I love Emily. She's kind-hearted and always ready to help when anyone's in need, but her culinary skills? A bit of a different story. When it comes to cooking, she's never quite hit the mark. Her enthusiasm is unmatched, though, if anything, that's what makes it so challenging. Every year, she insists on making something homemade, and every year, it's a bit of a disaster. Take last year, for example. She brought a stuffing that she'd revamped. I should have known something was off when I saw cinnamon and cardamom sitting on the counter next to the breadcrumbs. The result? A dry, over-seasoned mess that tasted like someone tried to turn a Christmas cookie into a savory side dish. Nobody touched it except for her husband, who took one awkward bite and nodded enthusiastically to avoid hurting her feelings. This year, I decided to take charge. It wasn't about controlling her or being mean. I just wanted everyone to enjoy the meal, and given her track record, I figured it was better if I handled the food. So I asked her kindly, I thought, to bring non-food items instead, maybe wine or flowers or something that could contribute to the holiday without potentially ruining the dinner. Her response was swift and harsh. She looked at me with those big, hurt eyes and accused me of being controlling, claiming I was shutting her out of the family celebration. My mind spun as she went on, saying I was making her feel inadequate. She insisted Thanksgiving was about everyone contributing, not me deciding what's acceptable. I tried to reason with her, pointing out that she could still be part of it without cooking, but Emily wasn't having it. She announced she'd be bringing her famous green bean casserole, and there was no way I could stop her. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to avoid an argument, so I let her have her way, but I couldn't help feeling a pit in my stomach. After all, I had worked so hard on the main meal. Why did it feel like I was being unreasonable for wanting to make sure the food was actually good? As Thanksgiving approached, the tension between Emily and me only grew. I kept hearing about her grand plans through family whispers. It wasn't just the green bean casserole anymore. Oh no. Emily had been busy concocting a whole experience, a trio of dishes she was going to bring, and she made sure everyone knew about it. My cousin, Mark, had the first clue when he mentioned a bizarre grocery haul she had, with ingredients like canned oysters, edible glitter, yes, glitter, and a strangely large amount of pumpkin puree. This wasn't going to be a normal Thanksgiving. I reached out to my mom, hoping to get some backup. Maybe she could talk sense into Emily. But instead, Mom just brushed off my concerns, calling me overdramatic. It's just one dish, she insisted, almost in a dismissive tone. But when I told her about the weird ingredients and the fact that Emily had been acting cagey about the whole thing, Mom finally let something slip. Apparently, Emily had been planning a creative menu, all along, her version of a Thanksgiving surprise. She even called it her Thanksgiving Trio Experience, complete with custom place settings and little menu cards. I could feel my stress levels rising. It was too much, and I wasn't sure how I could keep it under control without looking like the villain. I tried to talk to my aunt, who usually played the mediator, but even she thought I was making a big deal out of nothing. What's the harm in letting Emily experiment a little? It's just a holiday meal, she said. But I wasn't so sure. This wasn't just about a few quirky dishes. From what I was hearing, Emily was planning to turn the meal into some sort of avant-garde food experience with a side of family drama. When Mark sent me the screenshot from the family group chat, I knew I was in trouble. There it was in black and white. Emily had doubled down, announcing that she was bringing not one, but 3 dishes. There was the green bean casserole, of course, a glittery sweet potato mash that she claimed would be a showstopper, and, wait for it, a cranberry and oyster relish. To say I was panicking would be an understatement. I didn't know what she was thinking, but I didn't want my Thanksgiving to turn into a nightmare. The group chat also revealed a little more. Emily had started telling everyone how I was being controlling by trying to dictate what was acceptable. She even made some comment about wanting to expand everyone's palate, as if she was some kind of culinary genius. I wanted to scream, but I knew that would only escalate things. There was no turning back now. The entire family was either on my side or rallying behind her. Many of them just didn't want to rock the boat, while others thought I was just being a control freak. The worst part? She was already planning her grand entrance. Emily wasn't just bringing her food. Oh no, she had something more in mind. She was coming early to set the stage for her Thanksgiving experience. I could already picture it, candles, mood lighting, her bizarre dishes taking center stage. She'd probably turn the entire meal into a food critique session, where anyone who didn't like her creations would be labeled as traditional or stuck in the past. I was determined to get through it without another showdown. I'd spent weeks planning and preparing, and the last thing I wanted was a full-blown family feud over Thanksgiving dinner. I braced myself. The day of Thanksgiving arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air even before Emily stepped through the door. I had spent all morning meticulously putting everything together. The turkey was golden brown and juicy, the mashed potatoes were perfectly creamy, and I had even made my mom's famous cranberry sauce, which always gets rave reviews. The house smelled incredible, and I was so proud of how everything had come together. But that pride evaporated the second Emily walked in, like a whirlwind of glitter and chaos. She wasn't alone, of course. She had her 3 masterpieces in tow, along with a giant covered platter, which she wouldn't let anyone see until it was time for the big reveal. My heart sank as she walked straight past me, brushing off my greeting with barely a smile. Instead, she started rearranging the entire dinner table, moving my carefully placed dishes to the side, declaring that her food would take center stage. I wasn't sure if I should laugh or cry as she unfurled a table runner. No, her table runner, and began placing candles in strategic spots, talking about setting the mood for a creative dining experience. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was watch as my perfectly curated dinner was overshadowed by her self-proclaimed culinary revolution. I didn't know what was worse, the strange mix of dread and embarrassment that was bubbling in my chest, or the fact that I was letting her take over. But I wasn't in the mood to fight. I just wanted this Thanksgiving to be over without a scene, so I let her have her moment. Emily's Thanksgiving trio experience was, to put it bluntly, an utter disaster. She started with her glittery sweet potato mash. The glitter wasn't even edible. It was the same kind you'd use for a craft project. When one of the kids pointed out that it was crunchy, I tried to save face by saying it was probably just the seasoning. But no, it was the glitter. When I tasted it, just a tiny bite, I almost gagged. It was sweet, gritty, and strangely sandy. It wasn't the flavor of sweet potatoes I knew and loved. In fact, it wasn't really any flavor I had ever experienced. Next came the cranberry and oyster relish. I wish I could have warned everyone, but I wasn't sure what to say. The dish looked like something that had accidentally spilled on the floor and then been scooped back into the bowl. The oysters and cranberries blended in a way that was unsettling, more so because the smell alone could have cleared a room. The texture was slimy, and the flavor was so off-putting that it made my stomach churn just thinking about it. My cousin Mark took a spoonful out of politeness, then quickly tried to hide his disgust by swallowing it in one go. But the real piece de resistance, the star of the show, as Emily had called it, was the turkey gelatin mold. Yes, you read that right. A turkey gelatin mold. She had taken ground turkey, mixed it with some broth and spices, and turned it into a wobbly, translucent shape that resembled a cartoonish turkey. The worst part? She garnished it with parsley and cherry tomatoes, trying to pass it off as festive. When she unveiled it, the whole room went silent. The look on my mom's face was priceless, like she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Mark, trying to hold back a laugh, immediately started coughing. The rest of us just stared at the monstrosity in disbelief. The table had gone from awkwardly quiet to fully tense, with everyone eyeing the gelatin mold like it was some sort of alien life form. I thought maybe someone would try to be polite, but no one even made a move to touch it. I wanted to say something, but I knew it wouldn't help. Emily was too deep into her vision to listen to reason. It wasn't until my mom took a bite of the mold that things really took a turn. I'll never forget the look on her face. She froze mid-chew, and for a moment, I thought she might actually be choking. She didn't say anything, but her eyes betrayed her. She looked regretful. My sister, of course, noticed the lack of enthusiasm, and without skipping a beat, she launched into a long-winded speech about how traditional Thanksgiving food was boring, and how she was trying to expand our palates with something more innovative. She even dared to call my mashed potatoes uninspired, which, coming from someone who had just served us glittered sweet potatoes, felt like the height of hypocrisy. The breaking point came when my aunt, who is usually the family peacemaker, took a bite of the turkey gelatin mold, only to immediately gag. She tried to recover by smiling and saying, "It's, different," but the damage was done. Emily snapped. She launched into an all-out tirade, accusing us of being stuck in the past, of not appreciating her vision. She said we were all unoriginal and that Thanksgiving needed to evolve. At that point, half the table was desperately trying not to laugh, while the other half was just staring at their plates in stunned silence. The mood had completely shifted, and I could feel the anxiety rising in my chest. Emily wasn't just upset, she was furious, and she was looking for someone to blame. Everything came to a head when Emily accused me of sabotaging her meal. She said I had been undermining her the whole time by not hyping up her dishes enough to the family. My face burned. It was as if she had no self-awareness about the fact that she had turned Thanksgiving dinner into her personal food experiment. I was trying to keep my composure, but my patience was running thin. It was so surreal, like we were stuck in some twisted cooking competition where the only thing on the line was my sanity. As the argument escalated, Emily's voice grew louder and more frantic, and I realized there was no point in trying to calm her down. I looked around the table. Half the family was awkwardly poking at their food, trying to avoid eye contact with anyone, and the other half seemed to be holding back laughter. The whole situation had become a spectacle, one that I wasn't sure we'd ever be able to forget. Emily's passion for her so-called creative cuisine was blinding her to the fact that no one was enjoying it. Finally, in a dramatic twist that was almost comical, Emily stormed out of the house, leaving her disaster of a meal behind. She barely spared us a goodbye, muttering something about how one day we'd all regret not appreciating her genius. As the door slammed behind her, the room was left in stunned silence. I could feel the tension melt away, like a pressure valve had just been released. The chaos was over, at least for that moment. My cousin Mark, ever the pragmatist, suggested we clean up the mess and salvage what was left of the evening. We quietly disposed of Emily's creations, not wanting to stir up any more conflict. The turkey gelatin mold, along with the glittered sweet potatoes and the oyster relish, found their way into the trash without much fanfare. The rest of the meal, my carefully planned turkey, the mashed potatoes, the cranberry sauce, was still on the table, and it was honestly a relief to see everyone finally digging into food they actually wanted to eat. My dad's emergency ham came through as a hero, saving the day when we realized we needed something hearty to balance out the surprise dishes. By the time we finished eating, the tension had eased, and we could almost pretend like nothing out of the ordinary had happened. Almost. My mom, though, looked shaken. I could tell she was conflicted. She had spent the whole time defending Emily, but even she couldn't deny that the evening had been a disaster. She finally admitted that Emily's approach to Thanksgiving food was a bit too out there for the rest of us. After everything settled down, the night ended on a surprisingly pleasant note. The family stuck around, chatting and laughing, and it almost felt normal again. But there was still that lingering sense of awkwardness, the knowledge that the holiday had somehow veered completely off course. We all agreed that next year, we were either going to a restaurant or completely bypassing Thanksgiving altogether. As I sit here reflecting on what just happened, I still can't believe how badly things went. The whole evening felt like some fever dream I'd never fully understand. Emily had meant well, I think, but her vision for Thanksgiving was just too much for us to handle. I'm trying to figure out what to take away from this disaster. Part of me is relieved it's over, but another part is already bracing for whatever fresh chaos Emily is planning for next year. If there is a next year. The aftermath of Thanksgiving has left me in this odd limbo of both exhaustion and disbelief. I don't think I've ever felt so drained after a holiday that's supposed to be about gratitude and family. In a way, I'm relieved the chaos is over, but I also can't help but wonder how it all went so wrong. It wasn't supposed to be a battle over who could create the most innovative dish. It was supposed to be a simple, enjoyable gathering. But somehow, Emily's need to challenge our palates and break tradition turned the whole day into something completely unrecognizable. In the days following, I've been getting texts from family members, checking in, some making jokes about the turkey gelatin mold, others asking if we should just cancel Thanksgiving altogether next year. The mood has definitely lightened now that the dust has settled, but I'm still not sure what the long-term fallout is going to be. Emily hasn't reached out to apologize, though I'm not exactly surprised. She's convinced that she's the misunderstood genius, and I'm just the traditionalist who doesn't appreciate her brilliance. I've heard from a few family members who've started to privately question her choices, but the real kicker came when my aunt texted me this morning. She said, and I quote, "I think we all know who's hosting next year," followed by a laughing emoji. I could practically hear her shaking her head. It seems like even Emily's biggest defenders are starting to realize that her version of Thanksgiving might be too much for us to handle in the future. Maybe, just maybe, next year's dinner will be a little less experimental and a lot more about enjoying the food we actually want to eat. The only silver lining from all of this is that the food was, at least, edible once we got rid of Emily's offerings. My dad's ham, despite being an emergency backup, was a hit, and even my mashed potatoes were well received. I think we all agreed that, next year, if we want something unconventional, we'll stick to a new dessert or a side dish, but nothing quite so extreme. And honestly, I'm not sure if Emily will ever see things the same way. I think she genuinely believes she's the next culinary visionary, but maybe this Thanksgiving will be the moment that makes her step back and realize that not every meal needs to push boundaries. Sometimes, people just want to sit down to something comforting, something familiar, without worrying about what glitter might be hiding in their food. In the meantime, I'm doing my best to recover from this whole experience. As much as I love my family, I can't pretend that this holiday didn't take a toll on me. I'm thinking about taking the next year off from hosting, maybe renting a cabin somewhere, and just spending the day with a few close friends who don't think sweet potatoes need sparkles or turkey needs a gelatin mold. Maybe next time, Thanksgiving can just be about food, family, and being thankful for the people who show up, rather than the drama. For now, though, I'm just happy to put this holiday behind me. And who knows? Maybe when the next Thanksgiving rolls around, we'll be able to laugh about this. Or, maybe, Emily will show up with something even more outrageous. Either way, I think I've learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, it's okay to stick to the classics and let the food speak for itself. And as for the turkey gelatin mold, well, it's a memory I'm sure none of us will ever forget. Hope you liked today's video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like. It helps us bring you more stories.